Hey, welcome to the RoxBox. I'm your host, Rox, and this is my once a month podcast where me, along with whoever I have on as a guest, will just talk about whatever the topic is for that month. This month, the topic is retro hunting, and with me, I have Homecoming. Homecoming, you want to introduce yourself?
Uh, yes, it is line police.
He sure is. Anyway,
It's nice to be here. This is going to be a very fun topic, and yeah, I can't wait to talk about it because this is something that, well, no surprise to everybody, Rox and I are like best friends? Question mark. I'd say up there.
yeah.
This is something we kind of bond over, honestly.
Yeah.
This topic has entered our conversation on many an occasion. Many an occasion. Whether it's sharing our hauls with each other, talking about what we want, or talking about our lists, or just the topic in general. But yeah, Rox, this is your show, so lead the way.
Yeah, so before we get into the topic at hand, I just want to ask, what have you been up to lately on your end?
Oh, with retro hunting?
Yeah.
On my end lately, I've been hunting specifically for the DS and 3DS. I've narrowed down the consoles that I hunt for because I'm sure we'll get into tips later and towards the end. But I've really narrowed down the console, and yeah, the 3DS has been the one I've been hunting for a lot lately. So when I go out, I'm really looking for those because I think the DS line of systems might be my favorite Nintendo system of all time.
And I get that. For me lately, I've been retro hunting more so for the Nintendo 64 and GameCube. It's a little difficult to hunt for GameCube at the moment just because of how the retro market is, especially in the GameCube side of things. But Nintendo 64, it's a bit easier, but like with the higher echelon games like Mario 64 and what have you, they tend to be a bit more expensive. Not super expensive, but more so like maybe closer to like 100 or so. One Nintendo 64 game I would love to have in my collection at some point is Mischief Makers, but I have not seen it at any retro game store that I've been to. What about you? What game would you love to have in your collection?
Ooh. Currently, I'm hunting for one that is a little easy to find, which is I'm looking for Mario and Luigi Paper Jam and Mario and Luigi Partners in Time so I can have the whole Mario and Luigi series. I'm not going after the remake of Inside Story just because it's like $50 and I feel like it is not worth the cost when I recently paid $20 for a complete in-box with manual and Club Nintendo slip of the original. Because I'm sure we'll talk about retro gaming preferences, but yeah, currently I'm hunting for Partners in Time as well as Paper Jam, and then I would say maybe a couple other games that I'm hunting for I would say is Rhythm Heaven. I cannot find that anywhere. I had the opportunity to pick it up and I didn't, and I've been kicking myself for a while. A complete version of Professor Layton in the Diabolical Box, and just a couple other things, because here's a question I'd like to... Well, you mentioned Mischief Makers, but I'd like to direct a question at you. How do you retro hunt? Are you content with cartridge only? Do you hunt for complete? Do you hunt for box? Do you even settle for... I'm sure you've seen it, but the box, but not with the original label. You know what boxes I'm talking about.
Yeah, like the old school GameStop boxes. So for me, I'd prefer to get it in box at the very least. I'm usually not expecting a manual. It's always a delight whenever I get like a game online for cheap, and it not only comes with the original box, but it also comes with the manual as well. I'm mostly just looking for just the box at the bare minimum. But even if I get something like, say, with my copy of Mario Power Tennis, where it just came in the box that the retro store I got it from made. What I did was I just printed out an original, like I just printed out the cover art, like online that I looked up on Google, just replaced it with that, so it feels like it's the original box, even though it's clearly not. But
Yeah.
I mostly just go for, at the very least, have it in box.
Yeah. For me, I've been getting a lot of retro stores that, like, you can tell that it's printed out because the cover is the same on the front and the back. Like, it's just the front of the game. It doesn't have a back with, like, writing or anything on it, or it's a printed out label. So some of those I've gotten for the sake of just having the game, but I've recently been hunting for complete copies of games that I love. So that Professor Layton in the Diabolical Box, I want in box with manual, give or take Club Nintendo slip, but I really want that one because I have Curious Village and Unwound Future that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I at least want the first 3 Layton games that way. And also, it just depends on the game. Like, if I'm hunting for Chrono Trigger DS, I will accept that cartridge only. I don't need the box and the manual because one thing that we'll probably get into is pricing, and complete copies can usually raise a game's price. I want to say a solid $20 to $30, if not more, if it's complete.
Yeah, and let me make myself clear. While I prefer to have it in box, depending on just how expensive the game is, like say if it's something like Gotcha Force or Go Go Hypergrind, chances are I'm never going to get those games. But say I found them at a reasonable price, but the reasonable price only applies to if you get them loose, they're not in box or anything. I'll gladly accept it, just because there's no way I'd be able to get it complete in box. There's no way I'd be able to get it with just the box, because then I'm looking at like 700 and something. Because in all honesty, even just a loose copy of those games are still overly expensive because the retro market is just that screwed up.
Absolutely. One thing I'd like to add is I think one of the reasons why I love to retro collect is just for the experience.
Yeah.
Now, like, just going into the store, like looking around, talking to the people who worked there, just walking in with my friends, looking around, seeing, hey, what do they got? They might have something on my list that I'm looking for. And there are times that I've walked out of retro game stores with absolutely nothing, because I did used to be in a bad habit of buying things just to buy them, and I would end up with these games sitting around that I bought just to own, and then I would never play them. So one retro hunting thing that I allow myself to do now is, like, if I'm gonna pick this up, even if I'm not going to play it right now, I'm going to play it. Like today, I just started playing Dragon Ball Fusions, which I got from a retro store, I want to say fall of last year. It's now spring of this year. I'm finally playing it. I finally got in the mood to dig out my 3DS and start playing games on it again.
Right.
And I think one of the big things with retro collecting is that some people kind of get into a habit of collecting just to collect. You know, Scott the Woz has that joke, games on a shelf.
Yeah.
Like, he even has a piece of merch about it. And if that's for you, that's great. If you want to be like, ooh, you want to talk about retro collecting, that this is a name drop, that Nathaniel Bandy N64 video, that one was a hoot.
Seeing that video made me really want to start taking retro collecting for my Nintendo 64 seriously, because you mentioned collecting games just to collect. If you and I get what you're saying, but at the same time, if you want a full if you want a full library for whatever console you're collecting for, sometimes you kind of do just have to collect for the sake of collecting, because there's going to be a lot of games on the Nintendo 64 that if I want to get the complete library for it, I'm going to also have to pick up some games that chances are I'm never actually going to play.
See, yeah, you say that. I think I might also say that because you and I come from different angles. The N64 has a finite amount of games. Having a complete DS collection scares me with the amount of shovelware that's available.
Yeah, because now that I think about it, then I could be completely off on this. I would have to look it up later, but the Nintendo 64, out of every other Nintendo console, probably is one of the consoles that has like the least amount of games on it. I'm not saying it actually does. I'm sure there's another Nintendo console I'm not thinking of
I'd say
that
the Wii
has
U.
less. Yeah, the Wii U has less, but behind the Wii U is probably the Nintendo 64, maybe?
Yeah, because when you think about like even the Super Nintendo, you have to collect all of these really expensive JRPGs like Earthbound and Chrono Trigger and Mario RPG. And even then, I used to be a Super Nintendo retro collector. And there were some games that eluded me that were really hard, like Sunset Riders.
Mm-hmm.
That one was always going for 80 or 90, and I just couldn't. Do you have a cutoff price? Do you personally have a cutoff price where you say that is too much for that, like a Path of Radiance? Or for me, for example, I know we were having a discussion with this with some of our friends a little while ago. I recently picked up Project Cross Zone 2. Now, I had in-store credit, but it was still $85.
Right.
But I wanted it that bad, and it was not on the eShop. But I want to know, do you have a personal cutoff point for retro games where you say, I'm not going above this price mark?
So, for me, it all depends on exactly how much money I have to work with.
Yeah.
Like, say if I go retro hunting and I only have $100, then my cutoff point is probably going to be 50. If I have like $300 and I go retro hunting, my cutoff point might be 100. So it really all depends on how much I'm going in with.
Oh, yeah.
But usually, say I have an infinite amount of money, or I have money to splurge, my cutoff point will usually be like $150, maybe 200 if I'm just really feeling like burning money, then maybe 200 is my cutoff point, but that's as
For a
far as
single
I'm
game.
go. Yeah, it also all depends on what game it is, because there are also a lot of games that are in the retro market that are overly expensive, and I look at those games and I'll play them, like, say, through emulation, which that's going to be another topic in the future, but I'll play them through emulation because there's no way I'd be able to get them normally, and I would play it and go, yeah, this game is not worth the asking price. This game is not worth $700. This game is not worth $500. Maybe like worth 50 at the most. It is nowhere near worth 100, maybe 100, 200, 300. So it also all depends on the game.
Yeah.
Because I was looking at a list of like some of the most expensive video games on the GameCube, and one of the most expensive games on the GameCube, believe it or not, is Disney's. What is it, like Disney's Basketball? And I can tell you right now that game is not worth its asking price.
I know how you feel because I really want Mega Man Star Force 3, but everywhere I see that is $180 to $240. And I also want Sola to Robo, and that one goes for about $300.
I can tell you right now, as someone who used to have Star Force 3, I love that game, but it is not worth the asking price that they were asking you for it.
Oh no, I know, and I used to have Star Force 3 also, so it hurts even more because I miss it and I want to own it again.
Yeah, let's get into that topic. Have there been games that like you used to have at one point, and like because of how the retro market is, you traded it in, not thinking anything of it at the time. You want to get it again, but now it's just overly expensive to the point where it's practically impossible for you to get it now.
Okay, let's begin. I owned both of the Goemon Mystical Ninja games for N64 as a kid. Traded those in. Yes. I owned Solo to Robo for the DS, complete. Sold that. I owned Mega Man Star Force 3. Sold that, traded in, so those 4 alone. But trust me, there's more. Oh, there's more. Another one that I would say that those 4 are the big regrets, though. I miss Solo to Robo, I miss the Mystical Ninja games, and I definitely miss Star Force 3. Another big one I would say is Rhythm Heaven DS because of how hard it's been to find it. It's been incredibly difficult to find it, and I really miss owning it. Another one I would say that I regret getting rid of would... Yeah, I have regrets. I have a few. Fossil Fighters Fossil Fighters Champions, because that one, Fossil Fighters 1 goes for $25, the 3DS one goes for $30 or $40. The second one, for some reason, goes for $80. So I miss that one. I miss WarioWare Gold, not because it's up in price, but because WarioWare Gold is really freaking hard to find. And I want WarioWare Gold again because that game is good. That is probably the best WarioWare game out there. So yeah. So I have a decent amount of retro regrets, and that is why I've been holding on to my physical copy of Rhythm Thief. I've been holding on to my physical copy of Turtles in Time, even though I have the Cowabunga collection, and everything Pokemon I hold on to. Like I'd say my rarest Pokemon right now is probably my White 2. Pokemon White 2.
Yeah, because you mentioned Rhythm Thief. That's a game I used to own physically, complete in box and everything. I got it when it was brand new. I traded that in at one point because I bought the game digitally. So I figured, I don't need this game physically anymore. Keep in mind, this was back on my original 3DS. When I got my new 3DS XL, I had to make a completely new account, meaning I no longer owned Rhythm Thief. Sometime last year when I went retro hunting, I found a physical copy of Rhythm Thief again. It was $400. That has to be one of my most regretted retro. That has to be one of my most biggest retro hunting regrets I've ever had. Just because I look at this game that when I first bought it, it was only like 30 something. And now it's sitting here right in front of me for $400.
That's why you gotta download it before the eShop goes down.
Yeah, and then you also have stuff like Animaniacs: The Great Edgar Hunt, where first time I ever played that game was back in like 2013, 2014. I bought that game off of Amazon for like 40, $50. It was brand new, mind you. That this was at a time where GameCube games were no longer what were considered retro. Like they were no longer being made. And yeah, I was able to find a complete inbox factory sealed copy of Animaniacs The Great Egg Hunt for $50 at the time. After a while I traded that game in. I don't know why I did, but that is one of my biggest GameCube regrets as well. And now whenever I see it, it's like it's in the hundreds. It's like maybe 100 and something at the cheapest.
And looking by the gameplay is not worth that.
I mean, it's essentially just Donkey Kong 64, but with an Animaniacs coat of paint.
Oh no!
Yeah.
Oh no, that's a lot of collectibles.
Not as many as you might think.
Okay, well, when you say Donkey Kong 64, my brain immediately goes to I'm going to be here for an hour.
Okay, so when I say DK64, what I mean is you have 3 playable characters. They have their own missions where they have to collect stuff. And you have to go back, like, say, when you unlock Wacko, you have to go back to earlier levels to do his missions and stuff. In terms of, like, just the main collectibles of each level, yeah, you can do that with literally anyone. It doesn't matter.
I'm guessing you start with Yakko.
Yeah. You have to you start with Yakko, and then you eventually unlock Dot, and then the final character you unlock is Wacko.
Why am I not surprised that whether they're willing to admit it or not, those two are just the protagonists of Yakko is the protagonist of the Animaniacs.
It's not so much that he's the protagonist, it's more so he's the oldest sibling. So because
he's the eldest?
Yeah, because he's the eldest of the 3. He's kind of seen as the leader of the group.
Okay, that's fair. So, one thing about retro hunting that I love that I was getting into earlier is just the experience of going into the store and just seeing what they have. I love the environment. I actually have a go-to routine of when I go retro hunting.
Mm-hmm.
Which is when I go retro hunting, I put in one headphone and I put on a loop of Cheap Shop from Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. And then I just look around.
Yeah, like I've thought of doing something like that from time to time whenever I go retro hunting. Though it's not Cheap Shop from Scott Pilgrim I want to listen to. It's the Time Sweeper Shop theme from Blink's The Time Sweeper.
That's fair. Another song that I like to listen to while shopping is if I know I'm going in there and I know I'm in a mood to walk out with at least one thing. Because there are some times where I just want to go and see what they have. And if they don't have a good poll, now I have 2 retro game stores. They are right across the street from each other. One of them specializes in board games and card games as well as video games. And video games, I will admit, are their secondary, like, people are mostly there for cards. But I have found great, and I mean great video game deals there. Yeah. Like I've found DS games, 3DS games, Game Boy Advance games. I've found really great stuff there. But people are mostly there for cards. Like more of their glass cases have cards in them than video games.
Okay, now here's a question. You don't have to say the name of the store. I prefer it if you didn't, but just in terms of describing it, what is the saddest retro game store you've ever gone hunting at?
Great question. Great question. Can I actually give a couple examples because they're kind of all tied for last place?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so one of them, I was in my hometown, and it was the size of like a walk-in closet, and they had way too much inventory, and it was all on top of each other, and it was super musty, and it was dark, and it was hard to see in there. So that one stunk. And then one of them I would say two of them I would say were actually fairly recently. They were the worst, the absolute worst experiences, is in the shops were not really well kept. The prices were astronomically high. The selection was not great. The game cartridges looked like they weren't being taken care of that well. They were charging really high prices for the games, and then one of them, the inventory was too big and the store wasn't very well kept. Like, one of them was just a retro store and it was not the best, and then another one was a retro and electronics refurbishment store, and you walk in and it's immediate glass cases, and they had so much inventory, and it's bad when you know they have so much inventory and nothing looks good.
Oh.
Yeah, it was bad. It was bad. And both of those were, not to go really deep or divulge off topic, but you remember that really, really bad weekend I had with my personal life in October last year?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was that weekend. I went to those stores to try to console myself, and I ended up finding two of the worst retro game stores ever. And then on top of that, I ended up going with some friends to a local Dave & Buster's. That one has a sister location to one of the retro stores that we frequent, and I've found a lot of great things there, including the Spider-Man PlayStation 4 Collector's Edition sealed that I found there for $100, which was amazing. But there's another retro stop down the street from that one, the good one. This is the last bad one. They sell used games at new prices. So I will pick up a copy and hold a copy of, like, let's say Star Fox Zero, right?
Yeah.
And I found it at a retro store recently for $16 and picked it up. That store will sell it for $30. Or I will look at a copy of something that isn't that good, and they'll still sell it for $30 to $40. Like, the prices in that retro store are really bad, and they have a decent inventory. They have like this giant wall of Switch games. They have imports. They have European Switch games. It's really good, but goodness gracious, it is the prices were bad because they wanted $30 for this Adventure Time game that you actually have me hunting for, which is the Nameless Kingdom, the Links to the Past one. Yeah, because I found Ice King, Why'd You Steal Our Garbage for $7, which is a pretty good price, I would say.
Yeah, that's definitely a really good price.
But now I want to hear, what are some of your worst retro game hunting experiences?
So, the worst retro hunting store I've ever been to is also the one that I went to get my PS2 fixed. Now, granted, it's not so much that, they were bad or anything like that. No, it's actually a really cool store. The thing is, they didn't really have much in the way of retro games. Like, their collection was very, very small. They seemed to be more interested in selling merch, like posters and figures and stuff, as opposed to actual games. And because of that, it's like it's really hard to retro hunt there. Trying to think, what's another one? I think that's really it, because every other retro game store I've been to, Their collection is actually really good. Like they have a good like there's a retro store that used to be at my mall. They closed down a few years ago, unfortunately. But I thought they were like top tier in terms of video retro gaming stores because all of their prices were fair. Not only did they sell retro games, they also sell figures as well as anime. Um, they had kiosks set up at the store where you could play like for like fighting game tournaments and whatnot. And it's not like the other store that I told you about that also sold retro games and merch where their collection was small. This store, their collection was pretty massive, especially for like the PS2, Xbox, GameCube era of games. But unfortunately, like I said, they closed down a few years ago. So here's something I would like to ask. Do you have any tips when it comes to retro hunting?
Yes. So my tips would be is don't collect for every console. This is because in that case you will become a jack of all trades, a master of none. Find a console that you enjoy, and one of my tips I would say is pick up the game and say, can I see myself playing this? Even if it's not now, can I see myself playing this? Now, if you're going for the sake of having a big collection, then just collect to collect. Go for it. You live your life the way you want to. But one question I like to ask myself is, why am I picking up this game? Now, there are some essentials for every console owner. I would like to highly recommend any console that has a version of Deal or No Deal. As someone who owns 3 different copies of Deal or No Deal across multiple systems and is hunting for more, I highly recommend that.
Yeah, but you also have a problem.
Listen, you can never take away what me and Howie have. That's all I'm saying. You can never take away the fact that I have Deal or No Deal for the DS. I have Deal or No Deal Special Edition for the DS, and then I have Deal or No Deal for the Wii, and I'm going to find more versions of it, and even if it's a console I can't play it on, I'm going to own Deal or No Deal. I also own a copy of Madden 08 because it cost 99 cents and Scott the Woz made it funny.
Oh my god.
Oh, wait. Ooh. So one thing I would say is another tip is don't always go in looking for games. Have a backup plan. Look for strategy guides. Strategy guides are really fun to collect. So I am very fortunate. I have 2 retro game stores, and they are literally across the street from each other. So it's not even like oh no, I went to one and the other one's on the other side of town. No, both of them are across the street from each other, and it makes me very happy. So, but one of them, the other one specializes in games, movies, and strategy guides and like merch, right? A little bit of everything. That one, I love sometimes looking for strategy guides. I love looking for old Nintendo Power issues, maybe a strategy guide to a game that I love where even though I've beaten the game, I want it for the artwork. Or some of these strategy guides, like I have a strategy guide for Mario Party 2. Why is there a strategy guide for Mario Party when most of that game revolves around RNG?
That's a good question.
But I still love that I have it because Mario Party 2 is one of my favorites. So that's one of the tips that I have is don't collect for every console. Know what you want, specifically if you're going to play it. And also sometimes go in expecting, maybe to get a plushie or a piece of merch or, a strategy guide. Because then if you open your mind a little bit, if you walk in and they don't have a game that you're looking for, you might not leave disappointed if you end up finding a strategy guide if your retro game store specializes in having a little bit of everything.
Yeah, I was
because
gonna say, you said go in not expecting to, not always expecting to find a game, but instead, look at merchandise, look at strategy guides and whatnot. I kind of want to add on a bit to that. Go in with no expectations because even if you're still looking for a game, if you go in with no expectations, you may end up finding a game you would have never thought of picking up otherwise.
hmm
Because that's actually how I got introduced to a few games like The Adventures of Cookie and Cream, Stretch Panic, um, a few other titles like Metropolis Mania. Those are games that I didn't go in looking for. I went in looking for other specific games. Man, I just went in just to look. I came across those games, they looked interesting, so I said, "Hey, I'm gonna pick these up. I'm gonna try them out." I think they're not exactly like top tier games, but I'm still glad that I tried them out because I wouldn't have even known those games existed otherwise.
Yeah. I want to know the adventures of Cookies and Cream, though.
Oh, have
I've
you heard of
never
it?
heard of that. No.
Oh, so it's weird. The entire game is a two-player co-op game, but the catch is like player one plays as Cookie and player two plays as Cream, and they help each other out in order to get through the level, right? But the catch is that both players use one controller. So player one uses the left side of the controller while player two uses the right side.
hmm
And that's the entire gimmick of that game. I recommend it.
That's yeah. So I want to revisit something that you were talking about earlier and
Hmm.
ask you a question.
Sure.
What would you say some of your favorite retro game stores are? Like favorites, go-tos, and what they are like.
So, a retro game store that I found out about recently um, is a game store by the name of, oh no, I forgot. I think it's Retro Games. Either way, it's downtown where I live, and there it has a very homey feel. Not like you just walked into someone's home, but as if like this is a this is a personal store. It's not a chain store.
hmm
Um, they have a lot of collections from every era of gaming. A lot of the games that they have like are actually reasonably priced. I was able to pick up a copy of Paper Mario there for Paper Mario Thousand Year Door for like $90. Every other retro gaming store I've been to, they always had it for like over 100, like maybe like 100, $200 or something. There, I think I picked it up for maybe like 90 something. Maybe it came out to be like $100 plus tax. But that was like the cheapest I've seen it in like a long time, so I had to grab it. They also had a copy of Sonic Shuffle that I got from there. That
And we've been judging you ever since.
look, Sonic Shuffle is a surprisingly hard game to find. All right, so of course I had to pick it up.
I know you picked it up for the action of Sonic sitting alone in his house with no music at night while his friends run around in the background.
Yeah, that and the fact that every time a mini game happens, you just hear police sirens as like just the word accident flashes on the screen. It's like, what just happened? Did I commit a
It's so
crime?
it's so weird that that game is as bad as it is when it's made by the people who made Mario Party.
Yeah, it's like I'm just going about my business. I'm doing the stuff on the board, and oh no, an accident!
Or the fact that whoever comes in fourth just dies.
Yeah,
They just fall into the abyss. They like everyone else like jumps over the pit, and then the person in fourth just trips and just falls.
yeah. It's like, thank goodness this is all a dream.
Thank
Yeah,
goodness.
spoiler alert, that entire game takes place in a dream. None of that is actually happening.
Sonic Shuffle spoilers, for the
for the two people out there who care.
wow, those two people should hang out. I bet those two people would be great friends. But for me, I would say that my best retro game experience, I love my two that I have here at home, just because they're across the street. They're in a. I've told you about my central hub, right?
No.
Okay, so this is like where I live. I go into town. There are two retro game stores across the street from each other. A mall on the same street that has a box lunch, a GameStop, a movie theater, a Barnes and Noble, all of the likes in it. Then I also have a Target really close by, a local grocery store really close by, and I have another GameStop across from the mall, as well as a Best Buy behind it. People come from my hometown, or people come to hang out with me when they need to shop. Because then across from